So when we discussed this topic, we actually looked at it and said, okay, yes, we're talking about journalism sustainability, but we should look at it from a broader perspective. And it's not just about research and universities, it should really be about their higher learning education system. Is it actually churning out ready, not professionals, but ready academics that will get into a market or an industry that they will actually be able to function in? Because things are moving so fast, and in journalism in particular, are the schools of journalism churning out journalists that are ready for work readiness, and when they go out of the system, is the media space what they've learned in their studies? So we can expand a little bit more about that, but I think the university system or the higher learning education system needs to do some reflection on what they can do to be reactive on a regular basis and use research and use insight to dictate what programs can be put in order for the journalists or any other higher learning education student to go out of the system and become ready for what's going on out there.
Let's jump in there. Not to be reactive, but proactive, and being research-led in the kind of curricula that we churn out. So being led by insights from our alumni, the industry, as well as other educators in what we teach, as opposed to looking at practice that we looked to 30 years ago, for instance. Just to move on to broadcasting, may I? Okay, so in broadcasting, we talked a lot about what it would take for us to convince people to stay with us and to convince people to believe in us once again. And the solutions we started talking about were things like creating relevant content or more relevant content, particularly in local languages. And something that came out in our most recent discussion was that journalists need to learn from influencers when we are talking about building communities. So that's something we think that is key, just leveraging that audience engagement and behavior to then shape the work that we do. Next topic, content producers. Time is going on.
Okay. We hadn't actually sort of set to say who will speak what. So the idea of content production, we discussed one, deepening our learning of specific bits. So the challenge we have right now with the universities is that we are still producing generalist journalists. People who come out, they have the theory of just about everything, but they do not yet have a specific inclination to what they want to practice. So they kind of go to the field and then begin to grapple their way around to find what they want to do. But if we are to try to improve the kind of journalists that that universities, academic institutions are sending out there, we suggested that it would be better if we began to have a bit of specialization that happens, say, after the first year or the second year of study. And this specialization can either be content-specific specialization or platform-specific specialization, such that the journalists can then, or it could be both. You can have both content-specific and platform-specific for the same journalists, so that we have people who then go out and begin to hit the ground running, unlike where they go and then begin have to grapple their way around. One example that we talked about was from Uganda. There is an institution called the Media Challenge Initiative, which has positioned itself as a bridge between universities and the workplace. So what they do is, when the students, they try to identify the best students who in different bits, and then they train them on the kind of work that they can get to do when they are in the workplace. This was born out of the fact that when people go for internship, they don't even know where what they are going to have to do. So that kind of bridge that the Media Challenge Initiative has offered has allowed journalists to learn certain skills that are specific, and then hit the ground running when they eventually go out to the field. Then we also talked about balancing the curriculum, where we have generic skills that you learn, and then you have a proportion of the curriculum that should have a bit more practical aspects of it. And I think WITS is doing this very well, because WITS has the Vuvuzela bulletin, where students actually learn how to design newspapers, present content for online, and do radio and TV. So that kind of marriage between theory and practice is what is lacking in some institutions, and we need to fast track that. Thanks.
Sorry, I'm just gonna, this is Chris's love and light talking about funding in the community media space. But just before he sets us off, there was a quote, I think it was from Kate, and the big problem that came up in funding is that, money left during the pandemic, and she said it's not coming back. So how do you work around that? And Chris will tell you how.
Okay, before I get into that topic, because I'm very passionate about that, but I just want to weigh in as well of the responsibility that journalists need to have with regards to coexisting with influencers, because influencers do also need to be helped with guidelines and ethics and what can be done, not to constrain them, but also to assist them with legalities and things that you learn as in institutions. So I think that's something that, from a sustainability point of view, in coexisting with influencers, journalists can actually assist influencers with regards to guidelines and media ethics, et cetera, et cetera. So going to funding, I'm really passionate about this one, and I actually didn't prepare for it, but I want to just go for it. The media industry needs a new script. The cheese has moved. That's what we said. And I think one of the key things that we actually need to focus on really in newsrooms is, how do we convert the newsroom into one that understands the business model? I think it's been thrashed out so many times, but I think a practical approach to that would be to put in KPIs as part and parcel of the responsibilities of the newsroom, whether those KPIs are KPIs specifically about the business of news. KPIs about you as an editor, you as a journalist, you need to understand at least some kind of a understanding of how the business model works, and not just assume that you will be just representing the views of the community or etc. So really, I think when it comes to how do we monetize, we need to focus on implementing KPIs in newsrooms that are specific about business. And then the last one is about policy change. And this one is very controversial. It's my parting shot. I do strongly feel that industries should have KPIs, just like taxes. If they want to operate within a specific country, they need to definitely have a certain percentage of their turnover annually as something that they need to contribute to the media industry. How that is facilitated, it's going to be facilitated through or administered through people like us that know what the problem is. So if you can give us at least a 0.05% of your turnover annually, we know that we're not going to come begging you for donations. We know that you can account to your stakeholders, to your shareholders, and it's also talking to your balance sheet, and it's your responsibility for that country. Because if we are the ones reporting about the damage that you're doing, we should be the ones also sharing how you can remedy the damage, because we hear from what the community is talking about. So it's not really about following up on stories that this industry or this company didn't do right, do this, do that. We should be going to the company and saying, this is how you can do right. This is what the community is saying. Try this initiative. So it's very broad, but I think policy change really needs to be something that we bring forward. Thank you.
Okay. Parting shot. Research, innovate, and then try to practice what you're really researching. Sometimes we have a lot of research work that hasn't been implemented. We have researchers who have done work, but they cannot communicate it. So there has to be that bridge also between research and journalism. And I think as the last, there's a saying I'm trying to remember, that the light bulb was not created by improving the candle. So we need to, the light bulb, yes, was not created by constant improvement to the candle. So we need to abandon the candle and begin to think of creating our own light bulb. Thank you.